Welcome to Probate Weekly. We do this every week on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream it onto Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. If you're watching on the live stream, feel free to put questions in and we'll monitor them in real time. If you come up with us on the replay, if you put questions in there, I will either answer them or forward them as appropriate to our guest and get back to you. You can register if you're watching us on the live stream. And when you get it regularly, you can go to www.probateweekly.com and you just simply put in your email and you'll get email reminders. And if you want, you also can scroll down and find the other audio formats as well as past episodes on our YouTube channel. Really excited to have today an attorney. I regularly like to have a breadth of attorneys, both geographically and in terms of practice. Most commonly, we have probate attorneys, probate litigation attorneys, and estate planning attorneys. Today, I'm really excited to have a lady who I saw through my affiliation with the Bar Association LA, who was leading a discussion, Jennifer Felten, who's a real estate attorney. Now, let me just say, for those of us for those of you outside California, when you hear real estate attorney, that normally means an attorney who does a specific set of transactions that we in California call escrow, whereas here in California, a real estate attorney is somebody who's more involved with the practice of real estate as it relates to various types of businesses, and we'll get into that. So I'm really excited to have her. I've had the other kind of real estate attorneys on, which are more, again, we would call more escrow officer in California, which is a defined set. But anyhow, we'll talk about the differences. Jennifer, I think I confused everybody as to what you do. Welcome to our call today.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
And you were so nice to educate. I think that was where I met you, as you were on panel with one of my favorite probate attorneys, Mina Sirkin. And I said, wow, if you're a friend of Mina's, you're a friend of mine. So tell me a little bit about, how do you describe it? People ask you, well, okay, you're an attorney. What's a real estate attorney? What is your kind of field of practice, and where are the outer limits of what you don't practice in?
Right. Real estate's a really broad term, right? Many things are encompassed in real estate. So my focus is actually representing businesses in the real estate space. So I work with escrow companies. I work with title companies. I work with real estate brokers. I work with real estate developers, investors, right? So the people who make real estate their business, we are their back end, their support system, their outside general counsel, helping them manage the issues that come up. We do work with consumers as well on actual real estate disputes. So if you hear the word quiet title or partition action or, a neighbor dispute, those types of things are within our wheelhouse as well. But our core competency is that business related work.
And in the course of that, working with real estate professionals, do you get involved in unlawful detainers and evictions in that space, or do you more advise them how to avoid that and then farm that out to specialists?
There's two real estate areas that we do not touch. One is evictions and the other is foreclosures. And the mindset is we want happy clients at the end of the day, and there's no such thing as a happy eviction or a happy foreclosure. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care what happens. They're just unpleasant.
I feel the same way about divorce real estate. One of the popular pivots for probate real estate agents of late have been marketing companies pushing us to take on divorce. And I said, I'm married 38 years by the skin of my teeth and by my fingernails. I don't need more unhappy people or unhappy with their marriages on top of my own challenges to be a husband. So I'm with you. And I also know that the people who specialize in that have a different personality. And I don't mean to put them down. I think you have to find what you do and what you like. And there are people who, they come across as a little more aggressive, but they kind of like the fight. They're fighting for their clients, one side or the other. So I don't mean to put it down, but I can just see that it's a different personality of who's going to deal with that versus dealing with consumers, obviously with businesses the way that you are.
Right.
So okay, you talked about a number of topics. Let's talk about them if we can a little bit. So you advise escrow companies and title companies and real estate companies. Is that like on compliance issues? Are you looking at like the real estate contracts and how they have procedures in place to operate on a regular basis? Might you look at a escrow company's standard escrow instructions? Is that an example of the type of things that you do?
It's really multifaceted. So, most escrow companies, most brokerages, not like Keller Williams, right? But most of them are small, independent businesses who don't have the resources to have an attorney on site, a general counsel, full-time attorney to answer their questions. So that's where we come in. We're outside, what we call ourselves outside general counsel. So from the moment they decide they want to start a business, we'll form the business. If they're in a regulated industry, title, escrow, brokerage are all regulated. You have to give a license. in order to do that business. So we will get them licensed with the regulator. Once they're licensed, we will help them as transactional issues come up, as they get sued, as they have an employee issue, right? Whatever is happening on a day-to-day basis, we'll help them out with. If they decide to sell, a merger and acquisition, we'll help with that. If they get in trouble with the regulator, we'll deal with the regulator and respond to the complaint. So it is what every business owner needs, that attorney in their back pocket when an issue arises. I've got a resource to help me resolve it.
A number of real estate companies, brokerages, have created what I would call kind of custom broker addendums. And I would say that they're typically the larger independents. Now, there's a second class I would call also like affiliate business arrangement addendums, where if you have a mortgage company or escrow company, you have to have such a contract. But there are other ones that have like a more generalized real estate addendum about Southern California, fires, regulation, construction, such. Is that something that you're involved with in the creation of? Do you review them, advise as far as procedures on that?
We do. We put policies and procedures in place for a plethora of different things. So for an escrow company, we'll do their escrow instructions and general provisions. For a brokerage, we'll do their independent contractor agreement or an addendum to a purchase agreement. I've done them for boards of realtors. I've done them for all kinds of different groups to help them manage that compliance and those related issues.
One of the interesting areas, now I'm going to get deep in the weeds, but this is Probate Weekly, so we want to go a little deep, and I am in LA, so I'm not looking for legal advice. You're not representing me, and your advice today is just a general conversation. But in the area of probate, it fascinates me in non-residential that commercial agents are always very big on, well, I'm a commercial agent, therefore I use air forms versus car forms. And one of the things I've noticed now that I've involved in that very deeply, that the air forms specifically say this is not a probate. Now you can change that, but that's the default in the contract. And unlike car forms, the air forms for commercial don't offer any kind of probate addendum. So when a customer comes to you, is that something you're aware of? Have you been involved with probates? And then do you just create a customized addendum as an attorney for each transaction, or do you have a template that the company uses over and over? Because I've asked this question, and outside of car forms, I've never seen anything in writing. In other states, people tell me, well, their attorney writes it up, but I think, well, that would be expensive, right? So how do you handle that, or is that something that's ever come to your attention?
Yeah, so the probate is a weird thing in California because it depends on what level of authority you are on how the probate interacts with the real estate transaction. So there's no question that if we're dealing with a seller where the property is in probate, it needs to be dealt with. I have seen it with commercial brokers where they feel confident, whether they are right or not, they feel confident that they can put it into the contract and address the issue. If it's full authority, they're probably going to be okay, right?
Yes.
If it's limited authority, they're probably not going to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
But so yes, that would be something we could prepare, and we could prepare a template, right, that they can use over and over again, not have to recreate it every transaction.
Right. It's fascinating because I brought that up to a couple of commercial brokers. They said, well, that's not true. And I would say, actually, it is. I've talked to the official, I guess the legal counsel for AIR CRE. Great guy. He was very responsive. He said, no, we have no template. We have no addendum. You're on your own. Good luck. I'm glad to be hired to do it for you if that's what you want. And of course, my client said, thank you. No, thank you. We'll use the car form. So that was interesting.
When you can attach, the car has an addendum for probate.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Our probate addendum to an AIR contract. Right?
Well, it's interesting. You're an attorney, and I'll defer to your legal judgment. I will say, as a broker affiliated with eXp Realty, our broker says we need to use one set of forms or the other, and we can't use car forms. Now, I would say legally, why would it matter? I'm a car member. I'm allowed to use them. I pay for the right to use them. Why couldn't I attach just an addendum to whatever contract I think is relevant? And I think legally, but I can say just for the record that I'm not authorized to do that, and I do follow the rules of a broker. For the record, in case she's listening, Deborah Penny, we love you. You're the best. You keep me out of trouble. Thank you so much. So, but you're right. I think you're right.
You need to talk with whoever your counsel is, with your company and your rules.
Yes.
But as a baseline idea, that wouldn't be impossible. You need an attorney to look at it and see if there's any conflicts or issues. So I can understand why your broker doesn't want the agents doing that, but it is a possible solution.
Right. Well, I think when you're a broker over 11,000 agents in the state, and how many 20,000 transactions a year, you have certain rules that may not be legal, but they're procedural and businesslike,
Right.
and I can understand. And my guess is, if I really had to do it, I could go to her and get her to sign off on a one-off, that kind of thing. So. I had a question I wanted to ask you on that so much. Oh my gosh, probate. Okay, well, we'll have to come back to that. So, how up are you, or are you involved in this discussion regarding commissions? And I mean, I don't know if you represent agencies specifically as a counselor or not, but obviously we have some massive potential as yet undefined and unagreed upon disruption or industry. I feel like it's saying we're going to have the landing of a huge hurricane, but we don't know what it's going to do. So are you involved in that? And if so, can you kind of give us an overview? What are you advising customers to, which in this case are maybe real estate brokers, how to prepare for this?
I have been very active in discussing this with real estate agents and brokerages and helping them try to put policies and procedures in place. And within the framework of what we're getting from the trade association, both the National Association of Realtors and the California Association of Realtors. I am a licensed broker in addition to being a licensed attorney, and I'm a member of the National Association of Realtors and CAR, and I'm a certified forms trainer for CAR. So I to buy them on their forms. So I'm intricately involved. I have not fully enveloped the 49 forms changes that are coming out in June yet.
They're coming out on Monday. The 49 forms being changed on Monday, just to FYI, for those of you listening, if you didn't know that.
This is one of the largest forms changes we've had in quite some time. But it's something that, so I'm very intricately involved. From a real world standpoint, I see this as an opportunity. And that's where people really need to be looking at this. One of the biggest failings in our industry up until now, in my opinion, was the fact that buyers agents didn't get agreements with their clients in order to represent them. The failure of agents to use a buyer broker agreement and that lack of contract was really problematic for a whole bunch of reasons, including the fact that it created a whole area of law called procuring costs that doesn't exist anywhere else. But because we wouldn't actually contract with buyers to represent them, they could go use anybody to fill out the contract, and who got paid the commission was something we fought over. So this is an opportunity not only to, be able to contract, to set what you're doing, right? So if I do this as an attorney, right? If someone wants to come hire me, I say, okay, you're going to sign a contract, and you're going to agree to pay me, and I'm going to agree to do A, B, or C, right? So now with the buyer broker agreement, an agent can say, I'm going to show you 10 homes. I'm going to be available these times in the day. These are the 50 damn things I'm going to do to help you find a house, right? We weren't doing any of that before. This is an opportunity to articulate your value, show what you do and how you do it, and earn your money, right? And that is something that I think is great.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that 100% that, I tell a story all the time in my trainings with my team that classic story, two people, men or women, in a jungle walk up on and discover a man-eating tiger. Mm-hmm. And one calmly sits down, starts taking off his hiking boots and puts on his running shoes. Mm-hmm. And his friend says, are you crazy? You can't outrun a tiger. And the guy says, no, you understand. I don't have to outrun the tiger. I just have to outrun you. Right. And I think for agents in a world where half the agents don't sell a house in the year, this is the chance for us to show our expertise, our knowledge, our command of the forums. And I will say that I did a YouTube video on a high-level overview of the new residential listing agreement form, which is one of the forms being changed tomorrow. It's going to look more like the residential purchase agreement, where almost all the data points are on the first couple of pages, making it much easier to read, much easier to input, much easier to double check. And it really spells out, of course, the driving force is this commission lawsuit, where it really spells out, okay, here's my commission, not 5 or 6%, but 2.5 or 3. And then here's the money we're going to give to the buyer's agent, 2.5 or 3. And then if I double end it, here's the percentage I'll take. Maybe it's less, maybe it's the same. And then here's what happens so I think it really is an opportunity that if you really learn the form, and I would urge everyone on this call to, check the new forms. They're on the CAR website and master them so that rather than, because customers are going to ask about it. They're just more, they just hear in the news or something about commissions. And if you're the expert, then you're the person they're going to choose to work with versus if you're not. So let me ask you on a high level, you're a trainer for CAR, so I think I know the answer is, and I'll just be upfront, as a real estate broker, I think the CAR forms are magical. I feel like I'm a great real estate agent. I'm a great broker. I'm a ninja. And the CAR forms are my knives and tools and swords to help me defend my customer or kill the other person if I need to on behalf of my client. I just feel they're so powerful. They're so well laid out compared to other states, which is all I can compare to. You remember NAR and you follow it. I'm just shocked at how far ahead I feel like CAR is, California Association of Realtors, is ahead of the NAR forms. Is that fair? Is that an accurate assessment?
I am a fan of the CAR forms. As an attorney, having a standardized industry standard really is helpful for us in managing disputes, knowing what's going to happen and how to do it. The CAR forms are updated very, very diligently to keep up with the law. Very diligently. If I tried to create my own version of a purchase agreement, right? Think about what kind of time and effort as an attorney I would have to put in to do that. So when I create contracts, I use the CAR forms, right? They are industry standard. They're going to give you a really good set of rules. I'll just say, I do not agree with everything in the CAR forms. There are business decisions and policy decisions that they've made that I don't agree with. But as a set of standard forms, they're invaluable.
Have you had a chance to review the proposed, I guess they're at this point, the drafts, they're due June for the probate purchase addendum and the probate listing addendum specifically?
I have not looked at those yet.
Okay, now I don't think it really matters because the question is so specific. Maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't.
Yeah.
The only change on the form is they added the property is part of a probate or conservatorship, not as common, or guardianship, not as common, or receivership, nice, that was there before, or other. What would be another? I saw this, I thought, what is an other? I say I'm the probate expert in LA, what is an other?
Who knows? I mean, something. Okay. I can promise you something happened that didn't fit one of those boxes that created this change, right? That's how forms change, right? Like, when I got into this industry, the purchase contract was, I think, 3 pages long, right? And we're at 16 pages at this point. And every time we get a new paragraph or a new page or a new clause, it's because there was a new case, there was a new law, something happened, and we were like, oh, we should clarify this. We should clarify, right? Like, So there was something that happened that wasn't one of those that they decided to do it for.
I'm on a quest to find out. If you happen to find out anybody, now Phil Levy on the call is saying perhaps it's BK. I think that would fall under receivership, but BK would be receivership.
Well, again, who knows from a practical perspective. I mean, there are minor situations where you're dealing with children. It could be something like that. Yeah. Who knows?
By the way, we got a shout out to you from Phil Levy. I don't think I know Phil. I don't think we met, but he says you're absolutely okay. Well, he's a fan. He says you're absolutely terrific, and thanks for arranging the podcast. My pleasure. And again, I wasn't that creative. I just happened to see a seminar. The LA Bar had I think it was LA Bar had a webinar, and that you were, it was a live event. And that you were on the panel with Mina Serkin, who's been on the show a couple of times. I said, wow, she must be good if she's on the panel with Mina. So, or brave, one of the two. No, I'm just kidding, Mina. We love you. Okay, so let's talk. Since you mentioned them, maybe it may not be something you do a lot of, but just because our listeners are mostly real estate agents who work with attorneys, let's talk about petition action. Because it is more common probably in probate than in general real estate by percentage. It's not common, but it's probably more common, something I've come across than an average realtor by the nature of it. And so my understanding of partition action is you have 2 or more parties that own a property, and one wants to sell, one doesn't want to sell, and the partition action would be something that you would go through to force the sale of the property. Is that a fair assessment, and how would you describe that?
Yeah, partition actions come up a lot more in inheritance situations because an inheritance situation often results in multiple people who didn't intentionally decide to own a property
Right.
becoming joint owners.
Right.
Hopefully, though, we have partition actions where people intentionally bought stuff together and didn't plan very well. But most these are unintended partnerships, right? Unintended co-ownership situations where you just don't have a meeting of the minds of what to do with the property.
Right.
And so the partition action is a legal process that will allow a court to decide what happens with the property. Sale is not the only option in a partition, though. It's just one of a smorgasbord of options in a partition action.
So, in my experience, and I think you said right, that typically it's because one or more of the parties never intend to buy the property; they inherit it. It's different when two parties get together to buy; they at least have a vision together. Maybe there's a falling out, and rarely that becomes a partition problem. But with inheritance, it's more common because you have somebody who maybe never owned property, doesn't have any kind of wealth other than the property, and wants to liquidate. On a practical level, and I know you can't give a legal advice here, I'm not asking that, but from a business advice point of view, my experience is almost always that if one partner wants to force the sale, either the other party has to pay them off, and there has to be a process to do that that's fair, or they could force a sale. At the end of the day, not only can they force a sale, but the other party could be held liable for damages for holding up the sale process if they object. Is that a fair piece of advice to give a client? They should obviously consult an attorney, but that's the risk that they face or what's likely to happen.
So I kind of have to explain how our legal system works to help explain the answer. In our legal system, you have to have a cause of action to file a lawsuit, right? So a partition action is a cause of action. A breach of contract is a cause of action. Negligence is a cause of action, right? You have to be able to articulate a rule that requires the action that you want to happen, right? So in a partition action, that is, I want to divide this property. Partition is divide, right? That's the actual terminology. Within the code, it has rules as to what is required to partition, and then it has what are called remedies. So if you have a cause of action and you prevail, then the second half is the remedy. How do we cure it? How do we resolve it? How do we compensate for it? The remedies in a partition action are divide it or sell it or whatever, right? So there's no defenses to a partition action, right? There's no defense. If someone asks for it, the court is going to order it. The only way you can stop it is if the person asking for it is committing some sort of fraud. Aside from a fraud claim or like self-dealing malfeasance, a court is going to order the property to be partitioned in one way, shape, or another.
Yeah, and that's why I try to explain that customers should pursue an attorney to get that advice, because the likelihood of them prevailing is so much greater. Whereas normally, you have to prove you're right, they're wrong. In this case,
Right.
if you don't have the property when to sell it, you're pretty much in your rights. And at the end of the day, my experience has almost always been, I say 90% of the time, they go to an attorney, they pay a retainer, they have to obviously agree to certain fees. The attorney contacts the other party and kind of explains them how the law works. They fold like a house of cards, and then we can move forward. And I would say I've probably had about 10 of those happen in the last 12 circumstances. So, Barbara Dwyer from Atlanta, Georgia. We have great contracts in Georgia as well. They're written with the assistance of a real estate attorney. We update it twice a year and meet monthly to keep the forms updated. Now, I'm guessing, Barbara, you say talk in general real estate forms that you have good forms at your association level. I'm just curious if anybody on this call in any state has a state-approved probate form. I'd love to see it. I don't believe there's any state in the union that has an official Association of Realtors probate addendum other than California. And while generally I make fun of California laws, this is our business association. These are our colleagues. We've worked together and built this. I think these are great tools and worthy of pride, not of saying, oh, we have extra forms and it creates extra work. The opposite. These forms protect our clients and help me protect my client and create more value and justify my commission as a result of that, in my opinion. So, okay. So
part of that too, Bill, just with California is we don't have attorneys doing real estate transactions, whereas that's happening in other states. That means the realtors are in some ways doing what an attorney would do. And so CAR has tried to mitigate that by building good forms so that you don't need an attorney to create those contracts.
Yeah. And I explained that to add to that. And also the escrow officer has certain powers in other states they don't have. They use a title company who doesn't have any of those powers. And so the escrow officer is like a mini attorney on the transaction part, but they can't give legal advice. And so that's where we as realtors can give real estate advice within certain confines and such. So,
Yeah.
okay. So Brian Nolan asks, since Jennifer is a real estate broker, oh, this sounds like a setup to me, does she also facilitate the sale of the property in the estate? So do you do probate administration and trust administration as an attorney?
Our firm does. I personally don't do it, but yes, we do.
So might your firm do that and have you be the real estate broker or vice versa? Or
It depends on the transaction and what's going on. I don't list property or sell property from that perspective, but it's very common in an estate situation where a family member is going to get the property or they have a plan. They've come to some arrangement. We'll document it. We'll coordinate it. We'll help them facilitate that transaction. We do not do, like I said, I don't list, I don't sell property, and I don't do escrow, right? I won't escrow a property, but we'll facilitate contracts, forms, documents when they've already come to an agreement and know what they're doing.
Got it. Okay, real quick, some housekeeping, just to kind of stay where we are. Probate Weekly, we do this every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream this on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and other formats, Twitter, I guess X now, Rumble, Twitch, you name it. If you find another free platform, we'll put it on there as well. Why not? You can continue the conversation. We have a Facebook group, Probate Weekly. We have just under 4,000 members. And I would say to real estate agents, feel free to post your probate or estate planning related content here to promote and get some more likes. Executive is one of our good friends. It's a great resource. Feel free to look for referrals for attorneys or real estate agents across the country. We want to be that resource for you in building your business. If you want to get notified, go to www.probateweekly.com. All you got to do is put in your email address, you'll register. If you want to scroll down while you're there, you'll find us on all the various audio platforms, as well as you can look at the past episodes on our YouTube channel. And our YouTube channel has a lot of interviews of attorneys and professionals as well, related vendors and such. Our guest today is Jennifer Felten, who is RELAW APC, a professional corporation.com. And there's her picture. I guess I should go to the front page there. And they have a whole bunch of attorneys. One of the ones I never asked this question before, but I can't help but notice, Jennifer, your name's at the top of the list. Does that mean something in particular?
I own the company.
There you go. There you go. So there you go. Well, I thought that, but I didn't see anything about, you're very humble on your website. I didn't see that you were the founding partner or the owner, but we worked it out of you. Okay, very good. Glad to find that out.
I don't have any partners. It's just me.
Really? But you have a it looks like a bunch of attorneys on 1, 2, 3. That's a pretty big firm for. No, just curious from a business point of view. That's an interesting format. How does that work for you, or how did that become your format? Or is that how you set out to build a business, or?
Well, I didn't set out to build a business. Life kind of happens sometimes, right? So I was an escrow officer for 15 years before I went to law school and became an attorney. I then went back to school, got my undergrad, got my law degree, and then I got pregnant and wanted to, not have to go commute and work for someone else. And so I started my own practice, and it has blossomed into what I have today. As an escrow officer, that job is a sales job. People don't realize that, but escrow officers are salespeople, right? We are commission based, and we go out and get clients in order to make the money that we do. So I had learned those skills in escrow. I took them to the law. So I'm the sole rainmaker for our company. I bring in all the business, and then I have a team who are trained and skilled attorneys to do the work.
Wow, that's fascinating. One of my team members, I'll give a shout out to Patricia Castillo, was a escrow officer, and she wanted to get into real estate. And I tried to explain to her, it was such great training, different than you. She didn't have the rainmaker skill because she worked for a big firm that kind of fed her the escrow cases, a title company. So she was more administrative in doing the actual work. But she learned so much about real estate. She didn't realize she was like coming from the planet Krypton, that she really knew that in a way that no realtor really knows those contracts and the details and the forms. And she had literally seen, I'm sure as an escrow officer, you see so many transactions a month to make a living compared to a realtor, that it's such a great career path from escrow to, in your case, attorney, or escrow in the case to real estate agent, because people want to pay for that expertise. And you have that because of the volume of work that you do.
The technical skills I learned in title and escrow are invaluable, right? Yeah. They really are. No attorney is going to get that. We sure as hell don't learn it in law school, right? They teach us about Blackacre and Redacre. And, I will say, because I'd been doing escrow for over a decade when I went to law school, and my real property class was my least favorite class. I got the highest grade, but it drove me nuts because they were teaching theory. Right? Law school teaches you theory. And I would sit there and they'd give this example and I'd be like, that would never happen. That would never happen. That would never happen. Right. So, so my incubator, right? My education, that escrow and title, it is just something that totally changes how I practice, what I do, how I resolve problems. We avoid litigation whenever possible. And as an escrow officer, you got to clear title issues. You got to deal with problems without having litigation as a tool. So that experience, that knowledge, that, oh, this is where you go to solve that problem. This is how you get that. I can read a map. I can read a legal description. I can do things that allow me to provide value that an average attorney wouldn't be able to do.
I feel the same way. I used to go to court every day pre-COVID and watch the 8:30 hearings, which was mostly the calendar, but also the sales. Yeah. And so I would go to see 1 or 2 sales every day, 5 days a week. I'd see 7 to 10 sales every week. So in a couple of years, I'd seen more than any judge had seen, than any attorney or anybody had seen. And so I would get involved in the case, and the attorneys would tell me something, and I'd say, well, that's not really true. I've seen judges approve that. Like there's a rule, you can't sell a court-confirmed property for less than 90% of the court appraised value, the inventory appraisal report. And so, well, it is the law, but I've seen judges, under certain circumstances approve it, and here's what we'd have to do. And in fact, the attorney that you were with on that conference was one that I brought that to and said, I can get this approved. I'm sure that I've seen that judge, and I know that they would approve this given the right preparation. File the supplement, bring the documents, stand up in court, make your case clearly, and if the judge has discretion, well, they can do whatever. Judges can do whatever they want. So. But that comes from the practical knowledge that I'm sure that must be the foundation that makes you so strong. So let's talk a little bit about, I know you don't do unlawful detainers, but you must refer them, or you must come across those and then have to help your clients through that process. So this is such a loaded question, but it affects our business all the time. I mean, I think that it's easier in probate when one of the people in the property is an heir, because now they're risking some of their inheritance if you structure properly. But in a standard case, it just seems so difficult in LA to get people out who are determined. Now, there's some extra legal things that I've done. I actually have some vendors I've worked with. What do you see, and where do you see this going? Like, you must have a little bit of vision down the road. Is it going to continue to get more difficult? Do you see any kind of light at the end of the tunnel on the issue of squatters or trespassers and things like that? Or is this just the new normal?
I'm afraid the way our legal system has developed in California and kind of the baseline philosophical positions that are being taken at the state level don't suggest to me that this problem is going to get better. If you want to call it a problem, right? That's already showing a bias from a landlord bias position, right? The reality is that we are a very consumer-friendly state, and the consumer in a real estate transaction is the tenant. And so they want to make sure that tenants are getting all of their rights, that they're not being dehoused without getting their day in court. And they've made it more and more challenging to do that for a landlord.
It seems to me, though, at the same time, that there's a small handful of people who've mastered this situation. Certain landlords that are very professional, very detailed, have very develop systems of screening, and of course the laws changed. They got to change those laws too, that seem to do well. Do you see that going on? Do you advise people to either retain those specialists or copy those procedures, or do you say you're on your own, I don't handle it?
We do guide people. We don't do the actual eviction, but
Right.
we absolutely do. We work with investors, right? We deal with this. We do development work. So when we're dealing with a developer who's going to build a project and they're building where something used to be, or is and needs to be torn down, right? We're working with those tenants. California has what's called the Ellis Act, where we get out tenants in a building when we're going to redevelop it and put something new there, right? There's a process for that. So we work in that space. And yes, the better you set up your forms, the better you vet at the front end to make sure you're getting the right tenant, the better. But there is no guarantee in our system. And pretty much in LA, once you have a tenant, you've adopted them. They're yours. And absent a just cause, as the terminology is, right? You're not getting them out. And even with a just cause, if they fight you, it's going to take 9 months to a year to get them out.
When I used to go to court every day, probate court was on different floors. There was some on the 6th floor at the Mosque building in LA.
Yeah.
Across the hall was unlawful detainer hearings. And one thing I learned was you would get solicited. I didn't, because I would dress like an attorney. I wear a suit and tie and
Right.
that kind of thing. But if you didn't dress like that, you'd be solicited several times with free legal help to help you. And so I try to explain to people, it's not that anybody doesn't have legal assistance. It's just a matter of who pays for it at this point, because every single tenant, if you take them to court, they're going to find an attorney. And you'd have to avoid them to get in the room without being, I think, cornered by an attorney at some point along the way. So, okay, so you're not going to give us any really positive news on that. It doesn't sound like.
I'm afraid not.
I have a podcast I do on the real estate market, and I looked through different news articles. And there was one about a development in Venice, and I think it cleared some hurdle legally. Of course, there's only 10 million hurdles more to go, and the opponent, which was some sort of a tenant organization, was complaining that this has been rushed through the system. And then later in the article says the initial application was 2021, so this is 3 years plus, and this is rushed through the system. And I remember Elon Musk stating that he had built his gigafactory in Texas 1 year from buying the property to opening up the largest auto manufacturing in the United States, and here we have 3 years, and we have ways to go. Okay, well, I don't think we're going to solve that problem on our phone call here today.
No.
So let's talk about business development, because you mentioned that you're the rainmaker, and I think in some ways, as an entrepreneur, real estate agents also need to be in the same business, but we also try to reach out to attorneys. I'm not trying to put a bullseye in your back and tell people to call you, but can you kind of describe what percentage of your time is in the business development space of your workday, and what are kind of the leading activities you do to generate business?
I would say I do 3 to 4 hours of business development on an average day. And it goes from my biggest marketing effort is public speaking. That is how I really built my brand. And so I average 2 to 3 speaking engagements a week.
Wow.
Out publicly speaking to audiences. So from a business perspective, it's called leverage, right? So if I'm
Right.
doing a presentation, I'm not talking to one person, I'm talking to a crowd. And hopefully my business marketing is B2B, business to business, not business to consumer, which I think real estate agents should do too. And you're going to think, what are you talking about? But you should be talking to other business professionals who have a client base that you can tap into. If I'm talking to a CPA or a realtor or another attorney for that matter, right? They have 100, 1,000, 10,000 potential clients that if I've connected with them and now they find someone who needs me, I'm who they think of, right? So using leverage and doing public speaking. When you public speak, people think you know what you're talking about, whether you do or not. It creates this persona of knowledge and experience. I take it very seriously. I really, I spend a large portion, I spend time every day learning. That is part of my daily routine, is compiling more information and data and keeping up to date with whatever's going on so that I can competently and intelligently talk. I do social media. So social media is a big part of my marketing. I do networking, right? So I go to networking events and I speak and I talk. I do a monthly newsletter. My newsletter is one of my best business marketing resources because it's about top of mind awareness, right? The statistics say that it takes 7 times of you touching someone, right? Some sort of business connection for them to remember your name. So a newsletter gets you out there touching them monthly. It's not too much where it's annoying them and making them turn you off, but then it's just a reminder, oh, by the way, I'm here. If you need something, let me know. It's funny because when I started my newsletter, I didn't think anybody'd actually read it, right? Like, you know how many things we all get in our inboxes, right? It wasn't about the content. I wanted the content to be good, and we do curate the content and we do our own content. We don't buy a canned newsletter, but I wasn't really worried about that. Wasn't the point. The point was the touch, right? And every month people will get my newsletter, and not only do I get business from it every month, but they'll read the articles and then like send me messages about the articles, like, and tell me stories of how they had something similar happen. And I'm like, oh my God, you actually read it. I'm shocked, right? But so you need to make marketing a part of your daily activity. You need to decide what types of marketing you want to do. Because if public speaking scares you, like, it's one of the top 5 fears of people is public speaking. So if that scares you, that's not the one you want to go with, right? You pick the 2 or 3 that fit your personality, your style, things you will want to do. Because if you want to do them, you'll do them, right? And then you do them consistently.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, but for those are real estate agents that I've been involved with coaching. She basically outlined the exact same thing I do and the same things that I tell you guys to do. Newsletter, you want everybody somehow connected. 3 to 4 hours a day, and I tell people your morning until noon, you start your day at 8 or 8:30, whatever it is business development. Now, attorneys are different. They have court hearings, and so they may have different schedules depending on how they do their business. But for us as realtors, we can control our schedule. And so for me, I personally set up my mornings every day is about business development, calling people, doing video content. And I don't do speaking in person just because I'm at a stage of my career where I don't have to, and I really don't want to. And I use this format to leverage my time, but it's the same principle that, when I can get 2 or 3 interviews on a video, I feel like I'm getting a lot of content, per hour. Talk about a little bit about the learning you do. What are sources that, obviously your learning is different, but in some regards it's similar. So when you say learning, like for me as a real estate agent, the CAR website with all the new forms, obviously I want to talk about that with people and news sites. What are some of the key sources you use for your learning in your practice?
So one of the things that I figured out was that trade associations are a really good way to get information, right? So if I want to keep up on what's going on in real estate, if I'm a member of CAR, right, and I'm getting their updates, I get emails every day with updates. I'm a member of the California Land Title Association. I'm a member of the California Escrow Association. I'm a member of the California Apartment Association, right? I think I have about 10 trade associations that I'm a member of. A daily or weekly email comes from them with updates, and I'll skim those updates. I won't read every article. I don't need all of it, but I am looking at and seeing what are the hot topics, what's changing, so that every day I know what the newest thing is. It's because I'm out talking to people in public, and I don't want to be, ambushed with some question where I look like I don't know what I'm talking about, right? So definitely keeping up. And so instead of me having to go research and dig into what all these things are, I have trade associations. This is their job to do. Right. So that's my best way to keep up with things. I listen to podcasts. I listen to books. Audible is one of my best friends. I have young children. I have a business to run. I don't read. I don't sit and read books, but I am in the car a lot. I go for walks. And so when I'm on that time, I'm using it to learn and gain more knowledge and information.
In some ways, I've made the learning of my business my favorite hobby.
Yes.
Right? And I used to spend a lot of time, listening to sports or listening to some other, politics or news. And I found, well, if I'm listening to a podcast about real estate law or probate law or real estate business development or personal development, I'm both enjoyable if I find a good one, as well as learning, advancing my business. So everybody listening on the call, Jennifer's going to give us a masterclass today on building your own personal marketing, and that's why she's built a successful business. It's not really that much different. Her product, her service is a little different. It's law versus the real estate piece, but in some regards, it's the exact same thing. So I really appreciate you going into detail on that. So you obviously, and just as we kind of come towards a conclusion, you obviously come across real estate agents. You represent escrows and titles and developers and investors and such. What are some of the practices that you see that stand out amongst the best of the real estate salespeople, since that's the majority of our audience today? What are some of one or two things that you see that they stand out? You go, well, that's really what they all should be doing. And then what are one or two things that you see that are typical practices that should be avoided?
So the two top things I think that make a difference between a successful real estate agent and a hobbyist, as I would call them, is running it like a business, right? So as a real estate agent, you don't have a boss saying you have to be there at 8 a.m. and stay till 5, right? So you have to be the one setting that agenda, setting that calendar. You need to run your business like a business. You are a small business owner. That mentality has to be how you're thinking. And as a business owner, you're going to expect your employees, and you're one of your employees, right, to meet certain obligations and deadlines, right? And controlling your calendar, scheduling, setting expectations, setting, requirements. If I have to make 10 calls a day. So I do a daily focuser where every day in the morning I set up, I have a calendar, but it's much more about what are my priorities and making sure I get them done, because you're never going to get everything on your list done. And one of them is 3 marketing activities. So the top 3 things that I'm going to do are on that day. And those are the 3 things I need to get done. I might do 20 in a day, but the 3 have to get done. So that's the first thing, is you treat your real estate business like a business. You're a small business owner. The second one is niching. And I know that sounds scary, right? A niche means you're narrowing your market, but niching is the key to success, because if you're a generalist, people don't know who you are and what you do. And you're not, like in a networking, for example, right? If I'm in a room with 5 realtors, how do I know which realtor I should refer to? Right? Because you guys are just in a sea of other people doing the same thing. But if you, for example, you've niched into probate, I know you do probate real estate. If I have a probate situation, I'm going to think of you, right? It means that less things are going to come to you, but actually more are. Because they know what you do, and you're going to have that direct link. When the right thing comes up, you're going to be who they think of. So niching, along with building your database, is a gold mine, right? You build the number. Marketing is a numbers game. The more people you touch, the more opportunities you have. We're going to get 0.1% of the people we touch, right? So if I'm touching 20,000 people, I'm getting that many more people than if I'm touching 10 people. This is basic math. So there are ways you can improve your statistics, right? But the baselines are really a numbers game. And so it's you build your database, and you make sure your database knows what you do, and it needs to be something specific, right? So I do probates, I do divorces. I work with single mothers who are trying to relocate, right? I met a guy last week. I was at an event, and he used to be a sheriff, right? So he markets to sheriffs and people who are first responders and in that space, because he can talk to them and understand their issues in ways they're going to be more attracted to him. And he has a way better chance of capturing them once he knows them, right? He still has to go out there and build the database, but he's going to get a way higher capture ratio than you and I with those same people, right? 100%. So figure out what you know, who you know, what are your hobbies, right? Go build a business around a hobby, something you like, because then you'll socialize with those people. You like them, they like you, you have stuff to talk about. People like to belong, community, right? So you build your community. You don't want every client, right? There's a disconnect where people think the client selects us. It's not. My intake is as much me deciding if I want to work with them as them deciding if they want to work with me, right? And I can do that because I built my database to have enough prospects to be able to do that.
And I think if I could maybe just put a fine point on what you're saying, I think you're also saying on your intake, you're looking for people you can create value for, because if you can create value for them in your niche or expertise area, then they kind of have to do what you say. They kind of have to choose you. Versus if you really can't create value for them, it's like a beauty pageant. Nothing wrong with that if you want to be a beauty pageant winner, but it's not a very fulfilling career versus really developing an expertise and creating value for our customers, which I think in the long run is more important. So look, Jennifer, this was a masterclass on how to build a real estate practice. I know you're an attorney. Hopefully other attorneys on the call as well will see your success and listen to your breakdown of the points. But it's the exact same fundamentals. There's really not any different, I think. Obviously, every market's a little different. Every sub-niche is a little different. But the fundamentals are always the fundamentals. And anybody listening today, I'd urge you to pay attention, maybe rewind and listen to that. That was just absolute gold from her and from somebody who walks that walk, because I know her through, how did I meet her? How am I publicizing her to my database? Because she's on a panel with somebody that I know. And it's funny because the other attorney I know very well, she didn't say I should call you. She didn't say I shouldn't call you. But I just happened to see an email with your picture on it because you're speaking in public. So thank you for your service to the community at large and the Bar Association in that case, and your training with CAR. Good luck with all the forms. I will point out to you that if you look on the CAR form, CAR website, with the release, the June 1st release, which is only a couple days away, most people don't even know there's new forms coming out, that the vast majority of the forms are not because of the commission. Now that's the number of forms changes. Yeah. So I forget how many that, 18, let's say, and 6 are because of the commission. So there's a lot going on. Any real estate agent, make sure you find the forms that are relevant to you and take a look at those. You don't want to find out the hard way that the form that you add on isn't applicable anymore.
Can I point out one of the big forms changes that I think everybody needs to pay attention to?
Yeah.
One of the biggest issues we have in California right now is fire insurance and all the issues that we have going on with insurers leaving the market because of their inability to get the rates they need. So up until now, insurance and obtaining insurance was part of the investigation contingency in the CAR forms, which was problematic because people tend to release that inspection contingency early on in the transaction. And often they don't figure out that insurance is a problem until we're at loan and that phase of it. So the new CAR forms have created a separate insurance contingency. So it's going to be its own line item, like appraisal, like inspection, like loan contingency. I love that because it's going to force the buyer and seller to talk about it and deal with it at the front end of the transaction instead of what we're seeing now is it falling apart at the end. And now we're fighting over the deposit and all, and we've delayed and we can't move forward. Right. So that one, everybody needs to know about and be prepared to manage, because that's going to be a major shift, even as separate from all the commission stuff going on.
I did not catch that. There was so much there. I printed out the list of changes, and I'm still reviewing that. I hit the listing agreement because I have new listings that I took today and yesterday that theoretically are, I have to pay attention to in June. And the probate forms I checked right away, but I didn't even look at the insurance. So thank you for pointing that out. Jennifer Felten, a fantastic resource. Again, RELAWAPC.com, and the website is RELAWAPC.com. And there is Jennifer, as well as her team of attorneys and staff. But at the end of the day, she's the founder, she's the head, she's the owner, she's the chief cook and bottle wash expert in real estate law and helping us with understanding the forms, representing escrow, title, businesses, developers, investors, and such. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I really learned quite a bit and learned a lot about sales. I didn't really expect it to go that way, but really, you're an expert and you've been successful. Thank you for sharing all that with us. Really appreciate it.
It's another area that I put a lot of effort into developing. I have a business coach and I coach other people as well. So it is something I take very seriously.
Do you want to give a shout out to the coach or not?
They only coach attorneys. It's called Atticus, and they are amazing. I will tell you, my revenue, my lifestyle, all of those things have just blossomed having a coach. That is another, get a coach, have someone help you figure out how to get where you want to go with whatever it is you're doing. So I've just spent the last year losing weight, and I got a coach to help me lose weight, just like I did for my business, right?
Wow.
Get the resources you need, get an expert to help you with whatever challenge you're dealing with.
If I remember right, we talked before, is the coach use the format of the E-Myth attorney or not?
It is. That is the baseline concepts of E-Myth. right? That most attorneys are actually just really good technicians.
Yes.
They're not business owners. And so I am a business owner. I am not, I could do the technical work, right? I'm an amazing technician from a real world standpoint. I don't do technical work. I spend 4 hours a day marketing, and I spend 4 hours a day running a business. I'm not the one drafting the contracts and going to court, right? I am not a technician today. I can do it, and I consult and I guide, but I am not the one in the trenches doing the work.
With the all-time great business books, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and it spawned kind of a whole movement of special books for industries. There's the E-Myth real estate agent book, which is really good. I don't quite fit all those pieces, but it got me thinking in that concept. And then there's the E-Myth for attorneys that has been the basis of numerous consultants to help their attorneys through a format of both business. So any attorney or real estate agent or any small business person, start with the E-Myth and then read the book that's appropriate for industry. Thank you for the shout out, Atticus, to the consultant as well. And again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate everything we did today.
Yeah, it's great.
If the rest of the call today, again, this is the Probate Weekly. We do this every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. We live stream this on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and any other format we can find it on. If you're watching this on a replay, feel free to reach out. But if you want to subscribe, go to probateweekly.com. And you can just put your email address and you'll get reminders and links to current, and you'll get the most recent episode as well. And if you scroll down, you also can see the other audio formats if you prefer to watch it on audio, Spotify or any of those other formats, Apple, all that stuff. And then the past episodes are on YouTube, as well as interviews with other attorneys and so on. So I think that is pretty much up to date where I want to go. Thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing you guys next week. And again, Jennifer, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.